Hey everyone, today we are looking into Lucrezia Borgia, a Spanish-Italian noblewoman who married several prominent Italian lords during the late 15th and early 16th centuries. This was a famous period in Italian history, the age of the Renaissance, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, and the Italian Wars. But Lucrezia's story was every bit as compelling, and there were many dark myths and legends surrounding her life. This is her story. Lucrezia Borgia was born on the 18th of April 1480 at Subiaco, which was then a town outside Rome, but which is a suburb of the Italian capital today. Her father was Rodrigo Borgia, a Spaniard who hailed from near Valencia originally, but who had headed to Rome in the mid-15th century, and her mother was Vanosa di Catanei, Rodrigo's chief mistress. In Rome, he quickly ascended through the ranks of the Roman Catholic Church under the patronage of his uncle Alfonso, who had been elected Pope Calixtus III in 1455. By the end of the 1450s, Rodrigo was a cardinal, a powerful office in what was an equally influential papal state, which controlled much of central Italy at the time, well beyond the Vatican. But Rodrigo was not exactly an average cardinal. He had many mistresses and sired several children, though this was not uncommon for churchmen at the time. There was great hypocrisy within the church during these years, as although the virtues of celibacy were preached, those in prominent positions blatantly ignored this in their clandestine private lives, and because of this, their behaviour became an object of some criticism amongst church reformers during the period. With Vannozza, Rodrigo had 4 children, and Lucrezia got along well with her siblings, especially her older brother Cesare. The two showed great affection towards each other, and Cesare would go on to play a prominent role in his sister's later life, but this strong bond would later lead to some dark rumours. As a daughter of one of the most prominent religious figures of the day, Lucrezia was afforded a very significant education in the new humanist learning, which had been developed in Italy during the Renaissance period, and which focused on ancient Greek and Roman authors. She was tutored by Adriano Orsini of Milan. Through Orsini, Lucrezia learned several languages, and she was fluent in later life in Spanish, Catalan, French, Italian, and Latin, while her humanist education would have included a solid grounding in Greek and Roman literature, rhetoric, politics, logic, and philosophy, the core subjects of the humanist curriculum. Lucrezia was growing up during a tumultuous period in Italian history. Although Italy at this time was the centre of European civilization, with cities like Rome, Florence, Venice, and Milan attracting the greatest artists of the day, politically, the peninsula was in a chaotic state. It was not united, but was divided into over 24 large and small city-states, the foremost being the maritime trading republics of Genoa and Venice, several city-states in the north, such as the duchies of Milan, Ferrara, and Urbino, Florence in Tuscany, which had the appearance of a republic, but which was actually ruled by the famous Medici family, and the papal state, ruled from Rome in central Italy. In the south, the Kingdom of Naples and the island of Sicily were controlled by Spain. What was more, from 1494, a series of wars broke out, overseen by Spain and France, who were rivals for dominion in the Italian peninsula after France began trying to acquire influence in the north of the country. All of this was significant for Lucrezia, because her father organised several marriages for her which tried to strengthen the Borgia's position within this labyrinth political landscape. When she was just 10 years of age, Lucrezia's father promised her hand in marriage to a Valencian lord, but this, and several other marital arrangements, were called off in the years that followed, as Rodrigo's political fortunes fluctuated in the early 1490s. His bargaining power changed dramatically in August 1492, when he won the contest to become the next pope. As Pope Alexander VI, he was able to negotiate a far more favourable marriage alliance through Lucrezia. On the 12th of June 1493, she consequently married Giovanni Sforza, a member of the powerful Sforza family which ruled the Duchy of Milan and several other small states in the north of Italy. This first marriage lasted only until 1497. By then, the Pope had decided that the alliance with the Sforzas was no longer the best option, and a better marriage alliance might be negotiated through Lucrezia, if the union was annulled. This was duly agreed to by Sforza after some pressure was applied, and he somewhat embarrassingly signed a document declaring that he could not consummate the marriage owing to being impotent, and this was sufficient grounds for annulment to be bestowed. Yet in response, it is believed that the humiliated Giovanni Sforza began to spread gossip, which claimed that Lucrezia engaged in sexual relations with her brothers and father. By now, Lucrezia was nearing her adult years, and rumours abounded that she was pregnant at the time of the annulment, owing to an illicit affair with a chamberlain who worked for her father by the name of Pedro Calderon. The events which followed are shadowy. Lucrezia disappeared from public for some time, and may have given birth to her first child by Calderon in the weeks that followed. Then, Calderon became a victim of the Borgia family's ruthlessness in dispensing with embarrassing problems. Well, he was found dead in the river Tiber, early in 1498. Her second husband, Alfonso of Aragon, was met with a similar bloody fate. Alfonso was a cousin of the Spanish royal family, having descended from the royal family of Aragon, the king of which was Ferdinand of Aragon, one of the two monarchs of Spain in the late 15th century, along with his wife Isabella. Lucrezia's marriage to Alfonso in 1498 was part of her father's decision to temporarily back the Spanish in the Italian wars, but the marriage would only last as long as Pope Alexander's diplomatic realignment. Despite it being a good match, as both were the same age and were even said to have fallen deeply in love, in the year 1500, the Borgias decided to begin supporting France again. Thus, the Borgias needed Alfonso gone, and he quickly showed up dead as well in Rome. Lucrezia may have been complicit in his murder, though the marriage had already produced a son, named Rodrigo after his grandfather the Pope. Lucrezia's third and final marriage followed 2 years later. This was her most prominent marriage yet, and perhaps this is why it lasted. Her new husband was Alfonso d'Este, the son and heir of Ercole d'Este, the Duke of the significant city-state of Ferrara in northern Italy. He would soon succeed his father and become Duke himself in 1505. The marriage was celebrated in early 1502 and would last for the remainder of Lucrezia's life. It eventually resulted in several children, though the parentage of these may have been debatable, as Lucrezia, like her new husband, engaged in a string of affairs throughout the 1500s and 1510s. These included a long-standing relationship between Lucrezia and the Marquis of Mantua, Francesco Gonzaga, and a separate affair with the Renaissance composer and literary theorist Pietro Bembo, who was widely regarded as having formalized the dialect of Tuscan Italian, which subsequently became the standard version of the Italian language used throughout the peninsula. Lucrezia's family relations and her many affairs and marriages made her a focus of salacious gossip and many myths in the late 15th and early 16th century Italy. For starters, there were many rumours about illegitimate children which she had with her lovers, the first being Giovanni in early 1498, who is rumoured to have been the product of Lucrezia's ill-fated affair with Calderon, though Giovanni's parentage is still disputed. Additionally, accusations of an incestuous relationship with her brother, Cesare, abounded during her lifetime, particularly so after her second husband was murdered in Rome in 1500, and Cesare was widely suspected of having ordered the murder. It is though unlikely that this had anything to do with some bizarre lover's jealousy, but was rather owing to Cesare's political activities at the time. Lucrezia's brother had acted as their father, the Pope's general, in extending the landed territory of the Papal State in central Italy during the late 1490s, and his decision to kill Alfonso of Aragon in 1500 was a purely political decision to do with the papacy's diplomatic realignment and alliance with France at this time. Lucrezia also developed the reputation of being a femme fatale herself, one who seduced men at will and who could poison them just as easily. She was rumoured, for instance, to wear a hollow ring which opened to allow her to pour poison into her unsuspecting victims' drinks. A notorious incident she was said to have been involved in was the Banquet of Chestnuts, a party thrown in Rome on the 30th of October, 1501. Here Lucrezia, her brother Cesare, and their father, Pope Alexander, were said to have been involved effectively in a borderline orgy involving some of Rome's nobility and dozens of the city's courtesans. There is only one account of the banquet, by the master of ceremonies at the papal court of the time, Juan Bouchard, and it is now assumed that the story was possibly entirely invented to smear the Borgia family name. It is possible, though, that Lucrezia was neither a femme fatale or even particularly scandalous in her love life than any other aristocratic lady in late Renaissance Italy. There is no doubting that she was considered especially attractive by contemporaries, but her good looks need not necessarily have resulted in any particular sordid behaviour. Rather, she seems to have been stigmatised owing to her family's rather dubious actions in the 1490s and 1500s. Her father, the Pope, had several mistresses, and encouraged his son to carve out his own kingdom in central Italy, using the resources of the Holy See of Rome to do so. And Cesare was the most notorious of Renaissance lords, who cast central Italy into chaos in the 1490s, and was reputedly a large influence on Niccolò Machiavelli when he set about writing his notorious political treatise, The Prince, some years later. Lucrezia's adult life was spent at the Este court in Ferrara, where her third husband became duke in 1505. As noted, she engaged in a string of affairs, though this was hardly unusual by the standards of late Renaissance Italy. This was complicated by one of her lovers, Francesco Gonzaga, having contracted syphilis around the time of, or shortly before their affair, a sexually transmitted disease which had arrived with devastating consequences to Europe in the late 15th century following European contact with the Americas. Though it is easily treated today with antibiotics, in the early modern period it slowly devastated the body, beginning with a rash around the genital region, then spreading further around the body, and finally leading to deformities and often the collapse of parts of the body, such as the nose, if the disease lingered for months or years. Yet Lucrezia did not apparently contract the disease from Francesco, which women are less prone to. Her father, Pope Alexander, died in August 1503. He was a curious man who was a ruthless Renaissance prince that broke all of the rules associated with his office, but who was remembered fondly by some of the other popes of the time. With his position weakened following their father's death, Cesare began to lose control over some of the territories in central Italy, which he had conquered in the 1490s. He was eventually arrested by King Ferdinand of Aragon and transferred to Spain in 1504. He spent over 18 months in prison there before escaping and launching a revolt in the north of the country, which ended in his death in March 1507. Thus, within a few years in the 1500s, Lucrezia went from being the daughter of one of the most powerful families in Italy to being an isolated figure descended from the fallen house of Borgia. She had at least 8 children, the legitimacy of which was questionable, and perhaps as many as 10, depending on the parentage of 2 others. However, she also had several difficult conceptions and miscarriages during the 1500s and 1510s, and in the end, it was this turbulent natal history which led to her death. On the 14th of June 1519, she gave birth to a baby girl, who was christened Isabella. It had been another complicated pregnancy for Lucrezia, and this time she never fully recovered. She fell ill after birth, and despite improving for a few days in the week that followed, she worsened and died on the 24th of June at the age of 39. She was buried in the church of Corpus Domini in Ferrara, the last major figure in the turbulent Borgia dynasty, which had been so prominent in Italy since the mid-15th century. Lucrezia has been one of the most widely studied women of early modern Italy ever since her death. For instance, in 1833, the great French writer Victor Hugo scripted a stage play named after her, retelling a version of her life, while in the 20th and early 21st centuries, she is featured in numerous books, films, television series, and even a video game. In these, many of the rumours which surrounded her during her lifetime have featured prominently. Thank you everyone for watching this video on Lucrezia Borgia. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave me a like and a comment down below. And if you're new, why not subscribe? I hope you guys have notifications turned on so you get all my videos as soon as I upload them. If you have any comments, leave them down below, and if you have any suggestions, also leave them down below. And yeah, that's all from me, so I'll see all of you in the next Forgotten Life. Thanks.